Hey, folks, today we're going to be talking with Dr. Tim Bertelsman about all kinds of things, kind of like a discussion amongst friends where anything is really on the table, but we're really going to hone in a little on chiropractic standardization, chiropractic specialization, and our experiences working on the state levels for our respective state associations. So I think you're really going to like this one, and I even think you're going to want to share it with your colleagues. But first, here's that syrupy bumper music. All right, we're back, and we are here to advocate for chiropractic while we also make your life a little bit easier using research and some good, solid common sense, and I hope some really smart talk. So part of making your life easier is having the right patient education tools in your office. Tools that educate based on solid researched information. We offer you that. I already did it for you. We're talking about the pre-orders that we're taking right now for our brand new evidence-based office brochures available at chiropractic4.com. Just click on the store link at the top right of the homepage and you're going to be off and running. Shoot me an email at dr.williams@chiropractic.4. Whoa, that's not it at all. dr.williams@chiropractic4.com. If something's out of sorts or isn't working correctly, we're still ironing out some little buggies. But if you're like me, you get tired of answering the same dang questions all the time. These brochures can help cut down on some of that and give you something fancy to put in some take-home folders for those new patients. So go check them out, would you? The F4CP. We've been working with the F4CP a little bit here lately, and I got to tell you, they are an excellent group and so much on our side. We're going to be launching, or the F4CP is going to be launching an Athletes and Opioids ebook towards the end of this month, and it's called A Case for Chiropractic, Disrupting the Cycle of Pain, Prescriptions, and Addiction. And I'm going to link it in the show notes, so make sure you go check it out and go see what the F4CP has been up to. Now, the DACO. Let's talk a little bit about the DACO. If you don't know what that means, it means Diplomat of the Academy of Chiropractic Orthopedists, and it is pretty amazing. And our guest today is intimately involved in the DACO here in America, and in fact, is the one that unknowingly got me involved in this whole thing. So we're going to talk about that. But as far as the DACO goes, I finished it. It's all done. I finished all 300 hours. And it took me, well, you got 3 years to do it. And you can kind of go at your own pace. I finished it in really about 7 months, if you count up when I really got serious about the online hours. So about 7 months. It could have been done quicker, but I have a life too. And so I had to find that balance. I think I got it done pretty quickly, though. I'm just going to start studying for the exams, and the first one's going to be July 20th. If I come back from that one and I'm on the podcast here and my dauber's in the dirt, then you'll know it didn't go so well. But we don't plan on that happening. We plan on passing that dude first time with flying colors. Now, since our guest is a big part of it all, we're going to leave the DACO talk there, and we're going to meet him. Our guest graduated from Logan College of Chiropractic in 1991, and he then went on to get his CCSP, his sports certification, there at Logan as well, and he finished that up in 1994. In addition to the CCSP, he's a DACO, which, like I just said, is a Diplomat of the Academy of Chiropractic Orthopedists, 300-hour course with 2 big hairy tests. And he is also an instructor for the live hours for the DACO course. So he gets to travel around all over the nation getting unsuspecting and impressionable doctors like me involved in the DACO. I act like I'm upset, but I couldn't be more proud. Anyways, he's not only a member of the ACA and the Illinois Chiropractic Society, but He's also a former president of the Illinois Chiropractic Society, so pretty big deal. He is also, and maybe most importantly, the co-founder of Chiro Up, which has to be seen to be believed, quite honestly. It's just amazing. And you can do that by going to chiroup.com. I'm a member. You're probably going to want to be as well. I don't even get anything for saying that. I'm just a nice guy, and it's a pretty incredible product. So let's get it started here. Welcome to the show, Dr. Tim Bertelsman. Thank you for joining me today. How's the weather where you are?
Well, you had been beautiful. Unfortunately, it just started raining today, but I think we're looking at a good weekend, so I'm optimistic.
Nice. Now tell me right where you are located.
We are in Swansea, Illinois, which is the southern port of Illinois, about 4 or 5 hours south of Chicago, and I guess you'd consider us more a suburb of St. Louis than anything else.
Right, because your co-conspirator, Dr. Brandon Steele, says he and his wife, they're just St. Louis people, right?
Yeah, they didn't make the cut for Illinois, so we had to keep them over in Missouri. Yeah.
Nice.
Exactly.
I do hope he listens. I bet he does.
I think he'll find a way to listen. He should be concerned.
So in the intro leading up to right now, I alluded to this a little bit, but 300 hours of education later, I want to thank you for getting me into this mess that we call the DACO. I'm going to blame it all on you and Dr. Bill Lawson down in Austin. Do you remember getting me into this, or was I just another dude passing through the exhibitors hall?
No, surprisingly, I do remember you, and I remember several people who are involved, especially in Texas. A lot of times the diplomate classes are a little bit smaller than what you have at another class. But absolutely, I remember we were at Chiro Texpo 2018, and our first meeting, I was in the exhibitor hall, and you swung by. And I think I had mentioned that there was going to be a class on lower back pain. It was part of the DACO class. And if I recall, there was more of an eye roll than anything else. And he explained to me in the same way that I explained to most people that, I don't have a long attention span. So I'll swing by, but don't be offended if I take off. And I'm glad to hear that you did stick around. I certainly remember having you in class, and Dr. Steele did as well. And you really took off, and I think that you're probably one of the people who completed the whole curriculum fastest out of all the people that we have now.
Hey, that's good to hear.
I do remember that.
I'm a bit of a get it started and get it finished type of guy. I don't like things just kind of lingering out there blowing in the wind. We want to get it finished. So that's good to hear.
Well, I would say that completing it in under a year is beyond getting it finished. So that's an incredible feat, and hopefully it brings you the same confidence and clinical ability that it brought me.
I remember you told me about the class, and I exactly like you relayed. I said, well, I will swing in and check it out for an hour or two, but then I got some other stuff to go. And you gave me a sly little grin and looked at me out of the corner of your eye and said, "You'll like it. You'll stay for the whole thing." And here I am. So I wanted to tell you thanks.
Well, you're certainly welcome. Thanks for being part of that growing program. We have a large contingent now that the program was near death, and fortunately there were two very dedicated, very smart people. Dr. Jim Brandt, who ran the Academy of Chiropractic Orthopedists, which is the testing body that allows us to have that specialty, and Dr. Jim Lehman, who's at the University of Bridgeport and directed their post-grad. And those two just kept pushing and working at a time when specialties weren't really popular, at a time where people didn't like to travel for classes, and they have been able to evolve that program from one small site of just a few students in Bridgeport to over the past few years with their guidance now, it's probably 16, 17 states and hundreds of participants. So that specialty has grown dramatically under their care, and can't thank them enough for allowing that to happen.
Man, that's exciting to hear. And then I don't know if you've been following along, but I just posted today, actually, part 2 of our interview that I had with Dr. Anthony Nicholson over in Australia of the CDI program that University of Bridgeport and Dr. Lehman use for their online education. And boy, that dude he is scary, scary smart.
Doesn't he make you proud to be a chiropractor?
Absolutely. Well, you do too, though.
Well, I appreciate that, but I'm not sure we're in the same league. That the first time I was introduced to him and sat down at the table with he and Dr. Lehman at one of the Connecticut classes, I believe, that was the first impression that you're just proud to be a chiropractor. He's so smart, and the classes, his online classes, which now the great part about the Diplomate, as you well know, is that it really requires 50 live hours. And the other remainder of those hours happen online through the CDI training, which Dr. Nicholson and his partner create. And that's incredible training that it's really practical. I don't know if you found how often you could take one of those classes and then just go right into patients that afternoon and actually start applying it. That it was not some boring didactic lecture. It was interactive, and it was tremendous.
It absolutely is exactly the way you described it. So tell me about your journey into chiropractic quickly.
Well, it is pretty quick because my parents had always seen a chiropractor, and I had gone a couple of times, but not really a lifelong patient, anything like that. If I'd have an ache or a pain or a kink, and I was always amazed at how he was able to relieve my discomfort or get me back on track with just his hands and a visit or two. And I thought that I wanted to get into healthcare in some fashion. I wasn't quite sure when I started undergrad. And the more that I studied, the more that I realized that, really there are miracles that are happening in chiropractic offices without drugs and surgery. And that was appealing. So I signed up for college, and here I am.
That was it. Well, that's kind of what happened to me. I got injured, and nobody could get me out of it until my mom said, you ought to try this chiropractor. And then, hey, now I'm 46, and here we are. Okay, so from your CV that you sent me over, I see that you did the CCSP, the sports certification, right out of school. What all have you done through that specific certification?
So right after I graduated, I was fortunate that Logan College was offering CCSP and concurrently the Diplomate in Sports. So I signed up for both of those, and the first year I was taking 1 weekend a month, and the second year I was taking 2 weekends a month. So that was 300 hours in the classroom and starting the practice. So it's probably a little bit more than what I or my family really wanted at that point in time.
Right.
But it was great training. So I finished both of those in 1994. I took the CCSP class at some point, I think just prior to that, and I'm still getting around to taking that Diplomate exam. But we've got time. It's only 25 years down the line.
What opportunities do you feel like the CCSP, specifically that specialization, what opportunities do you think that opened up for you?
I think probably confidence, which is probably what I've spent most of my life seeking in practice, as far as just being a more confident provider as to what can I do to make sure that I'm providing the best care for this patient, or finding who can provide the best care. So the CCSP certainly provided confidence. It's not real dissimilar to the orthopedic Diplomate. Obviously, there's a lot of content that's going to be duplicated. Maybe some of the differences in that process would be the CCSP might be a little bit more treatment focused as far as soft tissue techniques and those sorts of things. The evaluation side would be more the on-field evaluation and all the way through medical emergencies. So that was training that was unique to the sports Diplomate as opposed to the orthopedics. And I think that thinking quickly on your feet was one of the tools with the sports, because so many times on field or on court, you need to make a decision quickly as to, can this athlete continue? What's going on? How threatening is this injury? And so it certainly provided confidence in making those decisions. We're in our offices, we usually have a little bit more time. It's not, we have to put this kid or this guy or gal back in the game immediately. We have a little bit of time to think about it. So I think that helped. It makes practice seem a little bit slower, and certainly has helped with my dealing with athletes, recognizing that they're probably one of the more challenging populations, as everybody out there practicing can relate to, that they just want to get back to activity. Sure. And sometimes that slows their overall progress. But I think that the confidence and the ability to kind of speed up the evaluation process to making decisions more quickly.
Perfect. It's really kind of my next plan is either the CCSP after I take these DACO tests, either that one or the CSCS, and we'll see which direction I go. But I'm just following your path. You just keep on blazing the trail, okay? So,
don't do that. I'm following yours. We're probably walking in circles.
Yeah, when my wife says, "So what next?" I'm going to say, "I don't know. Let me get online and see what Bertelsman's up to."
Don't do that. Be a dangerous path.
So tell me about your practice. What does it look like? Who do you see mostly? Is it athletes?
No, I wouldn't say mostly. No, that I'm not one of those niche practices. I'd love to be, but I also like the diversity. That I found a study not too long ago that talked about how somebody thought that they were more of an internal specialist or they were more of an extremity specialist or a sports specialist. Surprisingly, their practices all look pretty much the same.
Right.
So I suspect that mine looks pretty much the same to everyone else's, that we'll see the whole spectrum. We'll see some children as back pain's becoming so much more prevalent. We're certainly primarily a musculoskeletal practice, not really anything outside of what I consider my expertise. But if you're coming in with muscle or joint pain, I think that I can evaluate it fairly well and hopefully provide you the treatment or find you the treatment that you need. We'll see primarily, I would say, middle age. Towards now that I'm getting a little older. I've been in practice for 25 years. That I'm starting to collect patients who are a little bit older as well. So we see all the way through the senior population, and they each have unique things that we can manage and unique ways that we can assist to meet their goals. Although their goals, an athlete's goal versus a senior's goal is very different. And I think that's been one of the learning experiences, is to not force my goals on that patient, but rather to find out what their goals are, because maybe their goal is just to be able to walk through Target as opposed to running a marathon. So trying to help them meet their goals.
I think that is a great knowledge nugget right there. I like that one.
Well, that's the only one I brought for you, so we may as well call it a day right here.
I know better than that. So we talked about the CCSP. Tell me about your journey into the DACO. How'd you get involved in that, and what benefits do you feel like, what doors has the DACO opened up for you?
Oh, that's a big question. It's a meaning of life question almost for me. That I would think that my journey started because I had a patient who I failed on, that maybe 10 years ago, Mary came into my clinic and she had a shoulder impingement. And at that time, I thought I knew a good amount about shoulder impingement and how to manage it. And on the fourth visit, she didn't show up at the time she was supposed to. So I went up to the front desk and I asked Debbie, where's Mary? And Debbie said, Mary called in. She said that she's not any better. She's not coming back, and she's going to see her doctor. And if you've ever had that feeling, you know how bad that stinks. That's not something that we want to hear. Yeah, exactly. And so at that point, I was not overconfident as far as how I managed the shoulder. Yes, I had exercises, and I knew how to evaluate. I knew what Neer's test were and Hawkins-Kennedy. But obviously, I didn't have the right recipe put together at that point in time. So I decided I was going to look deeper, and I went into the literature, and at that time there were still DVDs and books and obviously online. And I gathered as much information as I could. I took classes, and that's where I found the Orthopedics Diplomate program and started gathering information from that as well. And in the process of assimilating all that information, we developed a recipe for how are we going to manage the next shoulder impingement, and learned about the concept of scapular dyskinesis, which was life-changing, that we all treat rotator cuff problems and tears, and those rotator cuff tears, 95% of them happen from a chronic impingement, and only 5% happen traumatically. And out of those who have that impingement, 100% of them have scapular dyskinesis. So obviously, if somebody comes in with rotator cuff pathology, which is impingement in rotator cuff is going to be the vast majority of shoulder pain, most of those have scapular dyskinesis. And I really wasn't hitting the ball well with scapular dyskinesis. So I learned how to assess it, how to manage it, how to teach the patient to stabilize their scapula to get the acromion out of the way so it would quit getting pinched, and then I could quit using my ultrasound machine once I figured out how to actually help them help themselves. And that brought a lot of joy, because now instead of me praying that shoulder patient was having a cervical radiculopathy to their shoulder, I was not worried if it was coming from the shoulder, because I knew the recipe for it. So that's probably what led me to the diplomate, was just the quest for knowledge.
Right. What doors?
As far as
go ahead.
Yeah, and I think I'm probably answering that when I jotted that down, because that was a big question. As far as what doors does it open and what benefits has it employed? Again, the same thing as the sports or really any other training, just that confidence, being better prepared for the future as to what's coming our way and how are we going to manage that patient that when they do come in our door, rather than having to figure out the answers at that moment, having them in advance. So confidence would be number one. My outcomes have certainly improved, and I think that's going to be a big deal in the future. That in the past we got paid for just performing a service in the fee-for-service model, but now that we see times changing markedly, it's going to be fee-for-reimbursement. I'm sorry, that'd be great. It's going to be fee-for-outcomes, and so our reimbursement is going to be tied to our outcomes. And if we're not able to get outcomes as well as other providers or other provider groups, then we're not going to be paid as well. So I think that it's providing a better future for my practice, knowing that I can improve my outcomes by applying those best practices and measuring those outcomes to see how I'm actually performing. It also got me into a network where there's a network called Octegrity that you have to be a diplomate in orthopedics or another specialty to get into. And they're able to really control their costs because they know that these are typically people who are applying best practices. So I get referrals on a routine basis through the Octegrity network, and I get to hang out with cool people like you. So it's not just the social, not just the academic aspect, but really a whole lifestyle aspect that I'm glad that I stumbled across it and blazed forward.
Yeah, well,
although not as quickly as you did.
Well, I told you I'm impatient, but I have a really quick story. I had one of my new patients this morning was actually a medical doctor. Well, we don't get a lot of new patients that are medical doctors, so it's kind of that perks your ears up. And I have to say that before I went through the DACO, I felt like I was pretty solid on. Excuse me. I was pretty solid on low back differential diagnosis and things like that. So I think I'd have been all right prior to the DACO, but it just brought a certain level of communication with him and walking him through my thought process and diagnosis process and all of that, so that he's seeing me as a diagnostician rather than a therapist. And prior to the DACO, that wouldn't have happened. So, and that just happened this morning. So I figured I would share that with you.
Yeah, that's exciting. And just to the nth degree of, you always want to make sure that patients can appreciate your skill. I think that's one of the core components of healing, that they have faith in their healer. And that probably takes it to a new level if a physician can have faith in your healing ability and your knowledge base.
Oh, absolutely. It was exciting. I'm still in a little bit of a I don't know, a jolt, a high, whatever. So it was fun, and he did really well today. So now you and your business partner in Chiro, Dr. Brandon Steele, y'all do a great job staying on top of the most current research, as I do too. Sometimes I get some of my research from you guys, and sometimes I get it elsewhere. And how do you stay on top of it? What are some of your favorite sources?
I guess our top sources would be Medline and PubMed and those sorts of NIH resources that we subscribe to that, and we set alerts for about 105 different terms, so that if there's a new research that comes out on lumbar disc or chiropractic or spinal manipulation or plantar fasciitis or Achilles tendinopathy, we're going to get an alert. And we get those on a weekly basis. So there's three physicians, three chiropractors who monitor that. We each take about 35 of them. And then on Mondays, that comes in throughout the week. Then we'll look at all of the abstracts related to those key search terms and then mine out the best practice data. So one of my key search terms is carpal tunnel syndrome, which there's abundant research on. And so every week, in fact, just last night when I was watching a recap of the Cardinals game, I was sitting on the couch and pulling out that data. So if it's something that's going to change my recipe as far as what's a better way to assess it, what's a better, more sensitive or specific evaluation, what's a better way to treat it, is there an exercise that may be more appropriate or more effective, then we'll take that data and put it into our protocols, and then we'll send out the most pertinent ones on social media. And then obviously the blog, we'll ship that out. This week's blog will be 21 clinical pearls that came out in the research of March. So that's how we assimilate that data, and then all of that comes across my desk, and I pluck out which ones are going to go in which channels. And it turns into, usually we'll review about 1,000 relevant studies each month, and we'll have about 18 pages, which is probably about 100 pearls that come from that. And out of those, maybe 60 of them are recipe changers. The other ones are just interesting about how chiropractic or spinal manipulation is more effective for treating lateral elbow pain or lower back pain, things that kind of confirm what we already know.
Gotcha.
But it's a team of 3 people who put that together.
Well, y'all do a heck of a job. Now, I want to tell you, I remember I was studying for the Part 1 exam, and I was going through some of the classroom, some of the live hour slides, and I don't even remember what it was, but it had to have been your class, because we were talking about, I guess it was the part of the course that was discussing predictors for low back pain, I believe it was. And it had a picture of a fat cartoon laying on a couch, but it had Dr. Brandon Steele's face in it. So I want to hear a little bit about this friendly rivalry between you and Dr. Steele.
Well, so anybody who knows Dr. Steele knows, number one, he's probably the fittest individual on the face of the earth.
He is.
And number two, that you're going to have fun if you're around him. So I don't know if it's more of a rivalry or just a taunting of he taunting me. I guess I was lucky to have a small shot at him at one point.
Right.
But working and living with Dr. Steele is always an adventure. It's either an adventure or a cross to bear. I'm not sure which would be a more appropriate process. But on a weekly basis, you're going to come across something. Maybe it's going to be an air horn strapped to the bottom of your chair, or the glitter bomb that he mailed last year, or cup stacked in front of your doorway so you can't get in the door. He's decorated my car when I had to go on an MD lunch. So one of the things that we do is we'll go out to the MDs who refer to us on a every 6-month basis. And so most Tuesdays we're running out to some primary care doctor's office. And just before I ran out, he had decorated my tires with paint giving me polka dotted white walls basically on the tires, and he used a white shoe polish, which, by the way, doesn't come off after 20 power washings. So that was an interesting visit, driving up into the doctor's parking lot with that on.
So he's that guy.
Nobody got to. He's that guy, exactly. Yeah, he on April Fool's Day he taught one of my patients how to fake Cauda Equina syndrome, one that he knew well. It's one of our employees actually. So he's always got something up his sleeve.
That is rotten right there. That is right.
Yeah, just so your listeners know who he is.
And what kind of a person he is as well. So, I want you to know that this is the guy we're talking about. Did you realize that I was trying to do my homework on you before the show? So I put in your name like a Google search, and it pulls up Bertelsman Chiropractic, but over on the right, Brandon Steele's pictures on it. So I just want you to know that his evil plan, it's coming to fruition. So I just want you to keep your eye out for that.
Oh man, that's probably good for my image, though.
Well, he's, I don't know. That's between you two guys to argue. But when I had Brandon on the show, we talked a little bit about professional standardization or chiropractic standardization, as in making expectations more uniform for patients that are visiting chiropractic offices. And we also talked about chiropractic specialization, things that we've been talking about, like the DACO, CCSP, CSCS, those things. And can you share your thoughts on standardization and specialization and kind of how you look at them, and if you think they're important, if you don't think they're important? I want to hear about it.
Yeah, I think they're important. I think that both are. That I think one of our challenges in promoting chiropractic is that we're promoting something that is really not uniform. That in Illinois, when I was serving on our board, we had a campaign, and it was 18 by 2018, meaning that by the year 2018, we wanted to see 18% of the population of Illinois under the care of a chiropractor, which would be an escalation from what current estimates are between 9 and 13%. And one of the challenges that we came across is that we weren't really able to promote what a chiropractor is. Even our board couldn't agree on what a chiropractor was or what meant utilization of chiropractic care. In that if you have lower back pain or a tennis elbow, you could get anything from spinal manipulation to exercise to wiffle dust, depending on who you saw. And it was as though a restaurant chain, let's just use McDonald's as an example, was trying to promote hamburgers or McDonald's. And if a third of their restaurants were outstanding and a third of them were average and a third of them gave you a bad experience, it would be really challenging for McDonald's to promote that restaurant chain, and they probably wouldn't be successful at it. And unfortunately, that's what we're trying to do in chiropractic, is that there's a percent of practices that are outstanding and we would all be proud to send our families to, and then there are others that maybe not so much. They're a little out of touch with what current practices are. They've defined their own best practices, which don't match everybody else's. So having that baseline of standardization, saying here's the minimum at what you'd expect, that if you go to a steakhouse, you expect to get a steak and a potato. And you probably should get that, or at least have that available. Not that everybody is going to get it, but everybody has the availability to that. And too often I think that chiropractors might be missing the steak or the potato, or they get much more interested in the dessert that they're preparing and forgetting about why patients are really at our office. That standardization, we need to have people who are skilled in manipulation, and that's usually not the problem. But I think we also need that potato of people who are skilled in the ancillary techniques, that they've taken McKinsey directional therapy classes, and that they understand nerve flossing and neurodynamics, and that they understand a little bit about nutrition and DNS and ways to rehab people that might be more effective than the traditional ways that we're using. So I think that everybody needs that baseline of the standardization, but then the specializations come into those later things, that maybe you're going to be a sports doc, or maybe you're going to be a DACO, or maybe you're going to get heavily involved in McKinsey or nerve flossing. And that's where I think we can ramp up the recipes. Not that, every cook shouldn't use the same recipe. They might want to put a little more salt or a little more whatever spice into it. But we should all be starting with a similar ingredient, that if you ordered potato soup, it looks something like potato soup as far as a best practice recipe. So I think that the standardization is key, that we all have a baseline, and then we can all improve that with the specializations like you've gone through. And I would think that you feel that your recipe is probably better now than what it was a year ago, and it was probably started as a great recipe.
No question. There is no question about it. Exponentially better than... And, I don't know. I've never thought of myself as the best, but also didn't think of myself as dumb or stupid either, fairly educated, but exponentially better than I was. So you mentioned your activity in the state association. I'm, as you know, probably I'm very active in the Texas Chiropractic Association, and I think it's incredibly important for us to get involved in our state associations, even if we don't 100% agree with everything that our state associations do. I had a pastor tell me one time, the problem with churches is that they're made up of people. So they're just different, there's different ideas, and you got to navigate the water. So tell me about your involvement with your state association and what it's meant to you both personally and professionally.
I think my journey into the state association probably started the same way that a lot of others did, and that's I sent in a dues check and wondered what I was getting from it.
Right.
That I paid each month because I felt somewhat obligated to. And then at one point in time, I became a little more involved. I was asked to help out with the district. and I helped out, and from there you kind of, it's the it's the first shot of heroin that once you start, you're sunk. Yeah, and you understand how that process just evolves as being in it yourself. That from the state, from the district president, I eventually moved all the way through the board, and then now the past president. And in that process, it was enlightening to realize a number of things. But number one, that we get out of school and we're fighting our battles in groups, and then we get out into practice, and we often become that lone wolf. That I think that's where things can go awry. That you start doing odd things that you didn't really learn in school, and you picked up from some seminar that may not be a best practice seminar, and so you start just doing different things along the way. And over time, by networking together, by staying connected, I think that we can stay more in touch with the things that are going to help our patients and the things that are going to move our practice forward with those best practices, but also recognizing that we can't accomplish a lot by ourselves, that laws really dictate how we practice and how prosperous we'll be and how much credibility we have in the healthcare community. And what I've learned through our association involvement is that there's not a single legislative session that goes by that there's not a significant threat to your license. And I know you in Texas, you can probably comment on that better than most any other state could. Without
yesterday, even.
Is that right?
Oh my gosh, we can't get a bill to add neuro to our description of musculoskeletal, so to make it neuromusculoskeletal, we can't get it out of the public health committee because of one person. We have the votes, but one person, the TMA, has them on lockdown, so we can't even get it to go for a vote because. That's getting into a whole nother deal. But yeah, just yesterday.
Yeah, that's a challenge that every state faces, and unfortunately, your challenge in Texas has been much grander than the challenge we all face. But like any fire, when the fire starts, it can grow pretty quickly and then start your whole profession on fire in the wrong way. And so I learned that our state association gives us a collective voice and collective resources. That when we're able to share our resources with our association, they're able to put those together in a focused effort to be able to target that single voice that you're talking about, or that lawmaker or lawmakers or party that is blocking what we're trying to accomplish. And the only way that you get a seat at the table is if you have established relationships with the people who invite the guests. And if you don't contribute to campaigns, if you don't continue to forge relationships, you don't get a seat at the table, which means that our licenses will go away very quickly and be jeopardized. And in the years that I served, we had, as I said, threats every legislative session, some big, some small. But one of the things we were most proud of being able to do was to forge those relationships with legislators and with the other lobbyists, that we have a working relationship with our Illinois State Medical Society and certainly the Physical Therapy Association, which is quite powerful here. And through that, we're able to support each other when appropriate. And by no means are we best buddies, but we certainly do have, I think, a good overall working relationship. And there's no way that I could have done that by myself. In fact, I'm only a tiny part of that. It's the members of our association, the Chiropractors of Illinois, who have been generous enough to share their resources to see the importance of that happening. Sure. And realizing that you're not a lone wolf.
I had a colleague of mine that was on the board of directors. He actually still is, and he said, "Would you rather have a seat at the table, or would you rather be on the menu?" And I'd rather have a seat at the table.
That would be one of my favorite legislative comments. And the second one being, you might like hot dogs, but you don't want to see how they're made.
Exactly.
And I think both of those are particularly true. Right now, our seat, I think that we've been given opportunity to jump on an expanded guest list. And the opioid crisis is largely responsible for that. That right now, I think our nation and every state in the nation is battling the opioid crisis. That they're seeing what happened when prescriptions went awry, and now people are getting addicted and people are dying. In fact, 40,000 people a year dying from opioid overdoses, and that rate of overdose death has quadrupled at the same rate of opioid prescriptions quadrupling during that same time frame. And we know that trying to treat that usually mechanical pain with a chemical doesn't work out so well. It's generally not an opioid deficiency that created the pain. And if we can allow chiropractors to do their job, it's done safely, it's done cost effectively, and we can keep some of those patients from ever getting into that point. So all of these opioid task forces are looking for any resources to help them combat this problem and to be able to say we've reduced the number of opioid deaths in our state. And they're inviting anybody who has ideas to the table. And I know in Illinois we've been able to meet with the lieutenant governor, with the director of public health, and with legislators that we weren't able to in the past because of this issue, and forge some more relationships, some more doors, and hopefully move the laws forward like they've done in Nevada and done in West Virginia very effectively to make sure that chiropractors are a first line of care. Before there's an opioid prescribed, you're going to see a chiropractor. Yep. And if we could get that happening in 50 states, we'd be in good shape. And again, that can't happen by any one of us. That happens as a group.
Agreed. And going back to my story about the medical doctor coming in this morning, I had mentioned the updated recommendations from the American College of Physicians as of, I think it was February 2016. And they're paying attention. He knew about it. And he was like, yeah, that's why I'm here. That's why I send my patients, my low back patients, to spinal manipulative therapy or chiropractors. So they're paying attention, and I still feel like there's never been a better time to be a chiropractor. So to keep this from running too long, I'm gonna skip a little bit forward here, and I want you to tell everybody about ChiroUp and what it does, because it's absolutely amazing.
Well, I appreciate your endorsement. We ChiroUp was basically started on what we did with that first patient, Mary, who had the shoulder impingement. We developed a new recipe, and based on that recipe, we started enjoying treating those cases and had better outcomes. And so we decided we'd do that for a second condition. And the second condition was an isthmic spondylolisthesis. I wasn't sure at the time. Do you do a CAT scan and MRI? Do you use a brace, not a brace? What are the exact flexion exercises you're supposed to use? So we did our homework and had the recipe and had much greater confidence. So when the young person comes in with a potentially broken pars, we can assess it and manage it and have confidence in saying, here's what we do. And then realize we needed to do this for more than two conditions. And so we put together a board of directors of people way smarter than Dr. Steele or myself, who had specialties in all sorts of things. We have almost the leaders of almost every diplomate board. And there's a group of 15 or 16 people who now will go through the literature, will create protocols of the best practices, summarize that in a 2-page report, and then it's an online resource. So that's what ChiroUp is the online version of all of those protocols, which also allows you to transfer that information to patients. So if a patient comes in with a lumbar disc lesion, you can have your front desk staff draft up a report for lumbar disc lesion that talks about here's what it is, here's what you're going to do to solve that yourself, here's what we're going to do to help you, and here are the exercises that are most appropriate. And the patient gets video demonstrations of those exercises, and then we can survey the patients 30 days later to find out what the outcomes were from patient satisfaction and clinical outcomes, and then the provider gets to see those. And so we learn from each other that when we see that there's a practice who's knocking it out of the park when it comes to the outcomes for a given condition, we can go to that provider and say, can you share your recipe with us? So we create recipes from the literature. We allow you to transfer that to patients. And then we measure outcomes, and we only measure the top outcomes. So we don't even know if you're not one of the top 5 providers in each of those diagnoses, right, we don't know what that outcome is. And now we're in 1,000 offices in half of the schools as one of their clinical resources in one way or another. And we're getting a lot of data on a daily basis, and I think helping each other to become better providers.
It's absolutely phenomenal. And I tell people, when you go to these seminars, you have a tendency to go through the vendor hall or exhibitor hall, and you're just kind of glancing and walking by and trying to avoid eye contact because you don't want to get trapped into a discussion you don't want to get into, but sometimes if you stop somewhere, it just might change your life, which is actually what happened when I stopped at the Chiro Up booth last year. So pretty exciting stuff. Chiro Up is absolutely amazing. You can check it out on chiroup.com. Now, if people want to get more of Dr. Tim Bertelsman, what should they do? Where do they need to go to get their fix, I guess that's what they call it, a fix. And I know you're going to be at Chirotexpo in downtown Dallas again this year, June 7th through 9th. I'm going to go to that again because I'll be taking the Part 1 exam in July, so I think that'll be a good refresher. But you're going to miss me for at least a little bit because Dr. Christine Gertz is going to be there as well, and I'm going to have to see that as well.
Oh yeah, she's absolutely worth listening to. Outstanding, and one of those leaders in our profession that's advanced what we do. Certainly, we're lucky to have her. I might even miss some of me to listen to her, right. But we'll see. So I'll be at Chirotexpo. We're going to do a 10-hour class on managing the most common extremity injuries, and then we'll be throughout various state associations in the upcoming months. We have, if you look at the dcdaco.org, that will give you a list of all the orthopedic classes. If you check out the Chiro Up website, then we have a list of our classes where we'll be in Virginia, Connecticut, Kansas, Pennsylvania, I think Las Vegas. I'll be at Pro Sport later this year. But probably the best way to get more of this type of information would be to just get on the Chiro Up blog, which is free. And if you go to chiroup.com and click on blog, then we'll send the information every Sunday morning as to a relevant new test or treatment or that sort of thing. So there's a number of ways to get too much or to get information. If you get too much, then counseling's available too.
Well, that's it. Our time has come to a close. I appreciate you taking time out of your day. I know we're all busy, so it always means a lot when people come on the show. And thank you for what you're doing. You're one of those guys out there that is changing the profession for the better. And I just appreciate you. And thanks for coming on the show.
Jeff, I sure appreciate that as well. And the same is true. That one of the unique things about being able to deal with evidence-based chiropractors is by far you and the group of peers have changed my life way more than I've changed anyone else's. And the type of things that you do for putting out this information, quality content on a regular basis is truly changing our world. So we can each change our world in a little part, and together we'll make a huge difference. And I'm very grateful for your part and letting me be part of that.
All right. You have a great day, Tim. I appreciate you, buddy.
Thanks, Jeff. Same here.
All right.
Talk to you soon.
Bye. So there you have it, my interview with Dr. Tim Bertelsman. What a guy. Yeah, I don't know if you could just feel it, but Dr. Bertelsman he's just one of those guys, and he is making a difference. And before he's done, he's going to make a huge difference in this profession. And what an honor. And he's even if you don't care about the DACO, you just need to go to one of his classes because you're going to just feel smarter being around the guy. Thanks for listening, y'all. I want you to leave with the same message that we talk about every single week. And I want you to know with absolute certainty that when chiropractic is at its best, you can't beat the risk versus reward ratio because spinal pain is primarily a movement-related pain and typically responds better to movement-related treatment instead of chemical treatments like pills and shots. And when compared to the traditional medical model, research and clinical experience show that many patients get good or excellent results through chiropractic for headaches, neck pain, back pain, joint pain, and all kinds of good stuff. Chiropractic care is safe and cost-effective. It decreases instances of surgery and disability. Chiropractors normally can do this through conservative, non-surgical means with minimal time requirements or hassle on the part of the patient. And if the patient develops a preventative mindset going forward from initial recovery, chiropractors can usually keep it that way while raising the general overall level of health of the patient. But the key point is, if you don't remember anything else, is that patients should have the guarantee of having the best treatment offering the least harm. And you know what? That's chiropractic. Send us an email at dr.williams@chiropractic4.com. Let us know what you think of the show. Let us know what guests we need to have on in the future. We got some great guests coming up, y'all. Just keep on tuning in, telling your friends about us. Feedback and constructive criticism is a blessing. Source subscribes, excellent reviews on iTunes and other podcast services. Y'all know how it works in 2019. If you like something, you got to support it, you got to review it, and you got to share it. Can't wait to connect with you again. Until next week from the Chiropractic Forward Podcast Flight Deck, this is Dr. Jeff Williams saying upward, onward, and forward. Be sure to find me on social media sites such as Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. While you're at it, give us a thumbs up on YouTube. That's super simple. Be sure and visit chiropractic4.com. Give our podcast a listen. Lots of wonderful, wonderful information there. And as always, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.